welcome back to Speculation Station. I'm your host, Captain Ketter. I'm joined by Texas Honey Badger, say hello,
Howdy.
as well as Bodie again.
Hi, again.
And today we're wrapping up our commentary review on the last update from AMG, points changes in some errata. We left off last time with the Galactic Empire. We're going to pick up with the CIS and then Galactic Republic, and then hopefully we'll make it through all the general changes to upgrade cards. So, hope you guys are feeling pretty spicy, pretty happy about what's going on in the world. Um, I do have to apologize before we begin. Hopefully now you can hear me in my normal voice. Last time did not have my mic plugged in, so you were hearing webcam Captain Ketter, which is not a good sound on a podcast. All right, we're going to lead off right here with this is Separatist Alliance. So the first change we have is a change to Admiral Trench, who went from 36 to 32 points. This is kind of in line with Admiral Thrawn, who I think is also 32 points. So now the Separatists get a dice or a dial-ad commander that's equivalent in price, although a little bit more difficult to work with. Although there's some really nice what is it? Synergy between like T-Series Tactical Droid. I like the T-Series Tactical Droid, and it's really fun to use, but I wish it was a different slot because I'd rather use a different officer a lot of the time. For me, this change is 2 thumbs up. I guess, should we mention our thumb system since last time we just kind of jumped into it?
Yeah, so we've got
Yeah,
two
go
thumbs
for
up
it.
and then one thumb up. So like 2 thumbs up could be, hey, really great, love it, whatever. 1 thumbs up could be, yeah, I recognize it's a positive change or move in the right direction. It might not be consequential, or I might just kind of like it. Maybe it went a little too far, maybe it didn't go far enough. And then just kind of, we'll call it the gladiator thumb, where it's in between thinking about execution there, and it's just completely irrelevant. And then the same in the opposite direction. 1 thumb down, maybe it didn't go far enough, or it went a little too far, and it's an overall negative change. Or maybe it's a negative change, but it's largely inconsequential. And then 2 thumbs down is, I just hate this change. It's not good.
Bodhi, are your thumbs different from Honey Badger's thumbs?
No, mine are roughly the same. So my 2 thumbs, or I guess like my scale is about how it affects the game and like the state of the meta. So a lot of my 2 thumbs up are things that are going to have a huge impact on the game, or something that I'm just really excited about. And my 2 thumbs down are changes that I either really, really don't like, or stuff that feels very inconsequential, like Vader going down the couple points he did. Vader Commander was a double thumbs down just because like no one's gonna play him still. A lot of the inconsequential things that, you know, sometimes I'll get really petty and give it the double thumbs down, but a lot of my double thumbs a lot of my inconsequential stuff just ends up being the gladiator middle of the road thumb. But for the most part, I think we're kind of on the same page with the thumb scheme, but we have some pretty different opinions on things.
Okay, cool. I'm mostly in line, like Bodhi, with Honey Badger's statement on that. The last thing I want to talk about around Admiral Trench for me was that he is not a 32-point commander. That's kind of a hidden cost. The hidden cost that's added to him is all the other stuff you have to add in to make him work in order to get the tokens. So he's at 32 points, which is nice, but it may not swing too much. Although some of the other changes added on with this, like some of the squadrons decreasing in price, may make this a viable option now. But I said 2 thumbs earlier, but based on our errata and our change to our thumbs compared to what I was thinking, I would give it 1 thumb up. What about you, Honey Badger?
Yeah, I think I'd give it one thumb up. I think it's a move in the right direction. The Separatist squad game got a little bit of a buff all the way around, so um, maybe the 4 points to because he's a squad commander. I don't really see people playing trench not pushing squads. Maybe using them for repairs, but he's mostly a squad commander. And two of their aces got points reductions. They got a new ace, which we'll talk about later. So if you're running him and the other things that got points reduced, oh, and one of the officers got a buff to squads, but I don't know if that's enough. It's definitely enough to make me interested in playing Cis squads again. I've played Trench a few times. I took him to a store championship last year when we were still doing world invites with a bomber fleet, and I like the Cis ships. I like the Cis squads. It's fun to play. I just don't know how good it is. Fortunately, I think some of those problems maybe stem from they only have one ship in the game that can take Bomber Command Center, the hard sell. Only one of the hard sell titles can take Bomber Command Center, and that's just a tough place to be in for the faction. So, yeah, I'm alongside with you. One thumb up.
I'm a little bit biased. Trench is one of, if not my favorite commander in the game. There was a period of time where I was like, I was really pulling at the edges of the carpet to try and make Trench work. I had a list that was 2 Providences and like 12 Ultra Droids. That's how low I've gone. Um, but I've played a lot of different variations on this commander, and the whole time it's like if I had maybe 8 points across the whole fleet, I could make something really, really click. And the 4 points it's about half that. It's pretty significant. It pairs great with some of the other changes. A lot of Separatist stuff went down in points, and I'm not sure if Trench is going to be like one of the most powerful things in this game. I definitely think that he's kind of in line with Thrawn, where it's like he's really, really good, but having an expensive commander kind of is a weakness. And just like you said, Josh, you've got to bring all in that token support too. So um, it's like the Rube Goldberg machine kind of thing, and I really like that. I find it a lot of fun in all of the games that I play. I like having pieces that interact with each other. But I guess all that rambling is to say this is a 2 thumbs up, just out of my own personal bias. I don't think it's going to affect the game a whole lot, but I do think that it opens up a few new fleet strategies, and man, I'm excited. And also, I will counter the Thrawn or Trench being a squad commander. Um, at Osmo, the guy who won had a Bob Rec hard sell and then like a small screen, and it was Confire Trench. So he would have 3 Confire dials, and I think he would do like a either nav or engineering as the fourth one, just in case he was like in danger. Um, and you can basically do the same thing with Martuk, but it was actually super effective to be able to add a die and reroll. So it was like a weird dice fixing thing. But anyway, there's definitely some interesting things that you can do with it outside of just squadron commanding. But I do think that that is one of the more powerful things that he can do.
Yeah, that is kind of where not Galactic, the Clone Wars factions kind of are hurt a lot of the time is their dice fixing. Um, that's why they like LTT, and that's why it's such a big deal. But especially I would say in the Gar faction, it's kind of hard to come by with a lot of damage from the ships. I would say that the small ships have a much better time, and then Anakin Admiral's much better than people think. Somebody needs to take him. All right. Up next, we have Count Dooku, who went from 30 to 27 points, a drop of 3 points. I personally, I don't really know if this was necessary. I'm kind of ambivalent. I don't have any thumbs for this. Uh, it gives the farming type list a little more of a buffer where they can put out more of a bid to take second place from you, second player, and I don't know if I like that. I think I might actually give this a thumbs down. What do you think, Honey Badger?
Uh, I I don't know. I haven't seen a lot of Dooku. The I know Matt Fox played him a while in Texas, and I think he stopped playing right as I started playing, but I did see him play in one tournament, and he won the tournament with Dooku, but I haven't seen much Dooku at all. Um, and so I think that having more parity in a faction where your commanders are kind of in the same power level, maybe more. I don't really know what to call it, but appropriately costed. So if you want to do something different with your fleet, um, you have that option. You're not suffering too high of an opportunity cost. I think people see Dooku and they don't want to try and figure out how to make him work. Uh, he only gets 3 rounds of raid, and you have to choose 2 different commands, so you can't even raid the same thing every time. And in a world with every Empire, and not every, don't at me in the comments, but every Empire list having double Gazani and every Rebel list having double GR75 with CommsNet or whatever, like raid's not that strong, and there's no real way to there's no obvious way to capitalize on the the raid advantage that he gives you. Um, Maybe in a squadron. So I mean, I don't want Bodhi to rip my head off if I call him a squadron commander, but I'm just kidding, buddy. Um, Maybe in a squadron where you can raid their squads, but I don't even think that's the way Matt used to play him. I'm looking at the list that he won with, and I think he only had a handful of squads in that list, unless I'm wrong on that. But I don't really. I can't think of a. I can't read Dooku's text and think, "Oh, I'm excited to try this guy out." So maybe he needed to come down a few points because he's not played, but I just give him kind of I'll give it 1 thumbs up. Probably needed a point reduction, but I couldn't care less about it. It's like a gladiator thumb up. I don't know. It's a 0.5 thumb.
This is like a halfway thumb for me. I I wasn't really sure how to feel about this change until Josh, you mentioned that uh, it just lets you add bid because that's what Dooku wants to do is he wants to be second player and he wants to force his gross objective choice on you, and then he wants to raid your engineering to stop you from taking your ion storm tokens off, whatever the plan is. So yeah, I mean, this change, what he got 3 points down. Yeah, it's going to give him 3 extra points of bid. Maybe he'll be able to put in another officer or something, but I don't really see it making that much of an impact. Kind of like you mentioned, raid is such a niche thing that it's kind of underwhelming. So yeah, middle of the way thumb.
All right, so that wraps up the commanders. Next, Asajj Ventress went from 4 points to 2. Asajj is difficult to use. She is quite funky in the game. She might have some synergy with Trench because you'll like give a raid and then get a command token back, but I mean, the other synergies with TF, but it's just not great. I think this is one thumb up, like in the right direction, but she kind of falls short of being anything that's exceptional.
Yeah, I haven't seen Asajj played that I can remember. So to go from 4 to 2 points, I don't know if that'll be consequential. I think the tough thing for Asajj is, again, like delivering a raid. Hold on, what does it even do? Discard a
Therein
raid
lies the
from an
problem.
enemy ship. Right,
Yeah.
yeah. And so if she was 0 points, you might see her on a ship that you had an open officer slot. But how often do you have a ship with an open officer slot? That's a very valuable slot. And so there's other means of token generation, especially in CIS. You've got Teeks or Tikis, however you say it. You got Rune Hako, Hondo. You don't need Asajj Ventress in her current state, and so it's not that she's bad. It's just that she's bad in the officer slot, and you're just not gonna, not gonna want to take that.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think that in her old form, Asajj Ventress was bad, and in this new form, she's kind of worse. Uh, I don't know. People have said that they liked both versions for various reasons, but I just don't see it. This is probably going to be one of those officers that just never ends up on the table for me. I don't know why I would ever want her instead of Teeks, and even now at 2 points when they're the same, like I'm just going to pay them another 2 points and get Rune as well. Um, there are 3 excellent token commanders in this faction, and we did not really need another one. And removing raid is a little bit counterintuitive. So this one will be a thumbs down for me. I think that they probably should have just errated her again. Um, I don't know. Give us some interesting text, maybe. I want to like this character.
What kind of thumbs did you have for this one?
Just one thumbs down. I mean, I definitely appreciate that they noticed it, so probably not 2 thumbs.
All right, this next one I am extremely excited for. Sand Hill is finally takeable, usable in the faction. This is, I think, maybe the most consequential change of the whole Cis errata, and the reason is because of this. Now you can take Gazani cruisers with flight controllers and Sand Hill, and then activate 4 squadrons with flight controllers from something that's not a carrier. So you have a Gazanti that becomes a carrier, which you could always do originally, but now you can activate 4 squadrons. So this little guy can go off and sit at like long range of a ship and then activate squadrons while your actual heavy hitters come in, your Recusants, your Providences, and they deal all the damage to ships. This guy can do the fighter screen on his own. And then if he dies, he dies. He's like 40 points at that point. Let me see how much it is actually. 39 points. Sandhill, flag controllers, point defense, ion cannon, because if your fighter screen dies, then this guy can keep himself alive from squadrons a lot better with the PDIC. You can couple that also with the Munificence and then have a tanky fleet to beta strike somebody. So this is an exceptional change in my opinion because it makes the card usable. But also, this might, if people take this, it could be a little OP. I don't know. We'll see. I'm gonna give this 1 thumbs up. I would give it two thumbs up. Maybe I should because they identified the problem, made the change, and it's extremely functional and viable to take now. So I'll go with 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, I think other than admonition going back to not needing to be a ready token, I think this is the most powerful change in this change, and I'm all for it. I think this was a really good change. I think it is super powerful, and the reason why I think it's super powerful is because hard cell transports are the only ship that CIS have that have a fleet support slot. So that's the only ship that CIS can take Bomber Command Center on. And they just so happen to have 2 officer slots. So you can just stick Sand Hill on a hard cell transport in a squadron fleet because you've got the hard cell for the Bomber Command Center, and you still can do officer stuff with him, or that ship. It's kind of like a freebie. And one thing I didn't realize when I initially read him, because I don't play a lot of CIS, and so I didn't really care. But after I went back and reread him, he's like a fleet-wide officer. It's not the ship that he's on that can resolve an extra squad command or command an extra squadron by discarding a token. It's any ship in distance 1 to 5. So you can have your hard cell transport with Bomber Command Center, like I've been saying, and it doesn't even have to command squads. Your Gazani that has Squad 2 now has can do it with a Squad 3, or if you're doing like a Munificent or a Recusant support, so you can get the flight controllers flight controllers, or Providence with flight controllers, any of those things, they can activate squad command, dial plus token for an extra 1. If they have expanded hangar bays, that's an extra 1. And then use this guy. So like a Providence can activate, what's that, 7 squads without even having to give up its officer slot to do so, which I think it's really strong. I don't think it's overpowered. I might take that back here in a little bit, but no, I'm really excited. I think that this is a good buff to the Separatist faction, and I'm all for it. 2 thumbs up.
I'm also very excited about this change, and I don't really have anything that you guys haven't said. I think that you both brought up a lot of great points. I think that the thing that balances him is the fact that he only does his ability twice in a game. And if you think about it mathematically, 1 command token, now they are valuing that at 2 points, because Veteran Commander is 2 points and he gives you 1 command token. And some cards break that, like Hondo gives you 2 command tokens for 2 points, but he also gives your opponent 2. This is kind of like an extra token effect, and it's twice per game sitting at 3 points. So it's only like 0.5 times more powerful than just a token, sort of. It does stack, but you're only getting it twice in a game. So it's going to help you on that alpha strike where you really need to get your hard hitting but fragile squadrons in. But it's not going to do anything for you once you use these 2 tokens. So I definitely don't think that it's OP. I think that it is just the right thing. And honestly, any change to make it at least playable, I was going to be happy with, because in its previous form, the effect was just so underwhelming. If only they had given Hyperwave Signal Boost the same treatment. But yeah, so it'll be a double thumbs up from me as well.
Yeah, Hyperwave does need to get fixed. I forgot about that. Okay, the last thing I want to add to this guy is TI-99. You can throw TI-99 on the Kazanti with PDIC, and then it can be a little survivable flight controllers platform. And Sandhill can be at distance 5. Amazing. I love it.
I definitely don't think that you need PDIC on that, because if they're using their squadrons or close range ship to shoot at your Gazanti, I think that you're more than happy. Let them have the 30 points or whatever it is, and they're not shooting your big things that actually matter or stuff that keeps you on the board. So honestly, I would just go like save the 6 points that you're using for PDIC and just go like put that somewhere else where it's actually gonna matter, you know?
I mean, you could throw a little MS1 action on there and exhaust an upgrade card, which would be pretty good for 2 points.
Yeah.
But
Especially if you're like Kraken or something and you can use the crit effect.
yeah, okay, all right. Next up, we have I think it's the Gazantes. They saw a price decrease from 27 to 24 points. I think this is a move in the right direction because they were just overcosted. I don't know if they're necessarily overcosted because what they can do is pretty exceptional with their flight controllers and the ability to do a lot of blue crit effects. So being dropped at 24 points, which is reasonably priced compared to the Gazanti from the Imperials. These things could be used a lot more often to get some overload pulse off before something else happens and before your haymaker comes through. I think this is like a one thumbs up for me. I like the change that it's more reasonable to take, but the Cis Gazanti is a little scary, just in general.
Yeah, I like the change. If you look at this Gazani next to the Empire Gazani at 23 points, their stats are identical. But the Empire Gazani can take an offensive retrofit and a fleet support, and this Gazani can take a weapons team and ion cannons. So the weapons team that comes to mind for everyone is flight controllers, so you can get an extra blue. It's not really going to get a lot of use out of really much anything. Maybe ruthless strategist, but your squads in Sis are so squishy anyways. You're not really going to want to ping them for a damage. Um, so yeah, gunnery team. I don't know, but definitely flight controllers for the weapons team. And if you want to take an ion cannon, so you mentioned PDICs. Also, SW7s makes it to where every time you attack a ship, you're doing 1 damage. HIEs makes it to where you can do 4 damage to a ship from a 24 point little, or I guess at that point it's 33 points. I like the change because some of these upgrades like HIEs are 9 points, so to make it work, you have to invest a lot of points in them. Flight controllers is 6 points, so that's the equivalent of a Imperial Gazani taking CommsNet and boosted comms. 6 points worth of upgrades, and that's just for flight controllers. My favorite thing to use the Cis Gazanis for is Kraken. I like playing Kraken. He's probably my favorite Cis commander, and the Gazanis allow you to get into the medium range that Kraken demands. It makes them hit like a truck if you put HIEs on them because you're guaranteeing you get that crit. And people maybe will shoot them, but if they're shooting them, then they're not shooting your Providence or your 2 hard cells that are throwing much more dice at you and doing much more damage. So I think that that's their best fit into this faction. And at 24 points without having the fleet support is a good cost for them. I give it 2 thumbs up. I think this was a move in the right direction.
Yeah, before this change, the Separatist Kazanti felt like consistently one of the worst ships in the game. Because the fact of the matter is flotillas are gonna die. And you really don't want your transport slash support ship slash, whatever role that it's fulfilling. You don't want that to be almost halfway to a 7. And the biggest issue is the upgrade slots are just not conducive to what you want your support ship to be doing. like lacking the offensive retrofit and or the fleet command just makes it so awkward. And it trades that for a weapons team, which is really not something that you want on this kind of thing. Like you want it to be, if you're doing flight controllers, you want to be throwing more than just 2 or 3 squadrons. If you're doing like one of the crit effects, you want to be throwing more than just 1 or 2 dice at a time. And at 27 points, it just felt abysmal. Did not really want it for any role, but you were kind of forced into it because it's the only cheap thing in the faction. But this, compounded with all of the other changes, puts the Separatist Gazanti in a much better spot. I think I'm actually happy to take it in almost every fleet now. Probably not 2, but at least 1, which you kind of ended up doing anyway. But now at least I'm not upset about it. I mean, you guys mentioned some great use cases for it now. And I think the important thing is, if Sandhill is going to become the staple that people are thinking that he might be, putting Sandhill on it, like, I guess now at this point cost, you just get Sandhill for free compared to the old point cost. So it's a 2 thumbs up for me. I think that this is really, really impactful for the future of the Separatists.
All right. Next, the hard sell battle refit got a points reduction from 52 to 50 points. I guess this guy just was not taken because of his point cost. I don't think that's actually the case. I think the hard sell transport is just the most versatile version of the hard sell. It has the fleet command, so you can push the tokens around. And there's not much of a reason to take the battle refit. Let's be honest. It has the turbo laser and the defensive retrofit and the offensive retrofit, so it can be used to do some attack things. And but you really don't want these things you're not planning on these guys to get hit, and they're not supposed to be frontline vehicles, so maybe this is good for all those people that ran, what is it, Martuk, hard sell swarm with a single recusant. I guess it's good for those people. For me, I'll give it a thumbs up because I think, well, I don't even think that. I don't know. This guy does become a points pinata. I have no thumbs. Honey Badger?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think they needed a 2-point buff. They're pretty good ships. People compare them to like the Gar Peltas, and people say the Gar Peltas are so tanky, but these things have the same defensive token suite. They have the same hull value, and they only have 1 less shield than the Gar Peltas. They have 1 less engineering value, but an engineering token still gets you the same 2 points as for a Gar Pelta, and you need your Gar Peltas to push squads or to do other things as well. And these things hit a lot harder. They have 3 red dice out the front, 1 red dice out the side, and can take turbo laser slots and defensive retrofits and offensive retrofits. So they're more inclined, and they can go speed 3. So they're more inclined to be battleships and can move around the board a little easier. They have double dice flak. They're good ships. They only have 1 shield in the sides and 1 redirect, so they are a little weak there. But if you can keep them hanging back and stay at long range and keep them just in the front arc, then they can do a lot of damage. So I don't know. I'm not terribly upset about the points reduction. I don't think it was needed, but I just give it no thumbs. I'm fine with it.
I have flown so many hard sells, and I have not done very well with them historically, but I keep trying nonetheless. I think the first idea that I had for playing more than 3 hard sells at a time was with Grievous and TRCs, and so you could like get shot or shoot them and use TRC, and then when the other one of those two things happens, then you can discard the evade and then freely get it back. And so they're like very high hitting, efficient-ish ships. But the main issue is that once hard cells start taking damage, they kind of flop over and die. Their sides are really weak, and they just don't output damage once things are out of the front arc. And so you kind of have to fly them in a really weird way. And if you're flying them in that way, then it makes their movements really predictable. And I guess I'm just complaining because they're not CR90s or C70 Chargers. But I'm going to have to give this a double thumbs down because it's going to probably force me to put them back on the table, and I'm just going to lose games because of it. So,
All right. Up next, the Providence class carrier of both variants got a points reduction. The carrier went down by 3 points from 105 to 102, and the Dreadnought went down from 105 to 97. How much is that's 8 points reduction? That's pretty stout, honestly. These guys are points pinatas, and like you can make them survivable with Watts Ambor and General Grievous and Invincible title, so they can stick around. They are extremely annoying to kill. I will say that I've had to do it several times, and I'd rather shoot something else. Recusants are pretty easy to kill, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people fly them incorrectly. I think you should fly them like a Nebulon and kind of skirt. But a lot of people like to put their nose in. Anyway, I think this is a good change. I think they ended up with way too many points on them. I know you could save some points on the squadrons, but they just ended up being like 200 points almost whenever you put everything on there. It's just really annoying to fly something like that, and then like the whole game you're trying to just keep it alive essentially. And it's not a Starhawk, so if you're gonna put that many points on something, it should have some utility as well. And it was really hard to take the Dreadnought whenever you had to pay such a fee. Okay. I didn't have a defensive retrofit as well, so you had to put on the extra points for both the title and the defensive retrofit, which kind of sucked. All right, well, I'm gonna stop talking about this. I think this is a good change. I give it 1 thumb in the upper direction. Honey Badger?
Yeah, I think it was an okay change. I don't know. I look at the totality of everything. The Separatists have 2 large ships. Well, 4. Each ship has 2 different chassis or whatever. But they buffed, both of their large ships. 8 points is quite a drastic change for the Dreadnought, and 3 points for the carrier is a nice buff for them as well. I can't help but think of this in the context of Gar not getting the same kind of treatment. Gar only has 1 large ship, and I do think that it should have gotten a points decrease on both of its options as well. But maybe that'll come later. Who knows? Like you said, they can end up being points pinatas. The Clone Wars faction ships just seem to lack the firepower of the Civil War factions, with their smaller dice pools and terrible nav charts and restricted nav abilities. It's just really tough for them to stand up to the Galactic Civil War factions in the same price point, and hopefully lowering this price point will help them out a little bit. So that being said, I was revisiting an old list I used to fly that had the Providence Carrier, two hard sell battle refits, and two Gazani cruisers in it. It was a Kraken list that I was talking about earlier. And so I look at that and it's got 6, 10, 13 points right there just in hull reduction. So some of the other upgrades went up in points, but I'm maybe thinking of revisiting this list. Maybe I'll fly that in the second chance, the Vassal World Cup second chance tournament coming up. I think it's thumbs up. 1.5 thumbs up. Not quite 2. I'm not super thrilled or excited about it, but definitely think it's a move in the right direction.
So I think the important thing is the Providence is a very niche ship, and it's only just begun, like, people experimenting with it in a competitive context. We had Nick Larson, who got, I believe, 7th place at Worlds last year with a Grievous list that was the Providence Carrier and Hardsell and a Gazanti and like 120-ish points of squads. And a lot of people, including one of our guests, Garrett, Admiral Tater, flew a similar, or in some cases the same fleet, and had a lot of success with it. Garrett won the Chicago Uprising tournament, and I know a lot of people had similar experiences because it's a really, really strong and consistent fleet. The main focus of it was with Invincible, because having both defensive retrofits means that you can take thermals and early warning systems, and it's very difficult to drop that. And so you could put a lot of points in one spot in something that's probably not going to die, and then just focus on killing as much as you can and trading up, because your small ships probably will die. So the main thing is that the Providence Carrier was just the best option for the Providence because it's the one that comes with a defensive retrofit built in. So you could do both with Invincible. And then also the fleet command is really important because there's not a lot of dice fixing in the Clone Wars factions, and just being able to have the consistency of setting a die to a hit on every attack is really important, especially with H9s, which a lot of people would bring on these Providences. So that way you could farm points with the red objective. So all of that is to say, I think that the Providence Dreadnought getting a slightly bigger points decrease is warranted. However, I don't think that it's actually going to change how we see Providences. I think that people are going to continue to play the Providence Carrier instead of the Dreadnought. And if people are flying the Dreadnought, it's going to be for a weird, using the weapons team slot in a weird way. I don't think it's just going to be, oh, I take light controllers, or, oh, I take ordnance experts or whatever. I think that it's going to be something weird like Ruthless Strategist. But that's even a little bit niche. So I think that the changes are cool, but honestly, in all of my Providence lists, I've just been viewing it as, hey, the Providence went down 3 points, and then PDIC went up 2 points, and so it just kind of evens out in that regard. So it'll get 1 thumbs up from me. I really don't think that this change is super impactful, but it's definitely appreciated.
All right, up next is the squadrons. DFS 311 went from 18 to 16 points. I kind of agree with this change. The hallmark kind of the CIS squadrons is that they're cheap. And a 16-point squadron that, I think this is the one that gives you intel. Let me just check real quick. DFS 311, while defending, if the attack is obstructed, you may force the adapter to reroll 1 die of your choice. So it's almost like a worse dodge, honestly. So AI Anti-Squadron 1, Intel, and Swarm. The reason you take him is for Intel, and then you'd probably put him on an obstacle. Down to 16 points. His attack is kind of not great, with 1 red, 1 black, which can be amped up by Anti-Squadron 1 AI. I think this is probably kind of an ambivalent change for me. I don't think this is necessarily good because you're already not spending very much on squadrons. So I would give this 1 thumbs down. What do you think, Honey Badger?
DFS. That is the intel guy, and while you're defending, if it's obstructed, you can force them to reroll. I didn't think he was that good, to be honest. He's the only intel in the faction, but I didn't see him played very much. His anti-squadron dice are atrocious, a red and a black, so completely useless against scatter aces. I don't mind the points going down. If anything, I think it's a good move. I think all of the Clone Wars squadrons, well, most of them, were overcosted compared to the Galactic Civil War squadrons, and so I definitely think a lot of the Clone War squadrons should have dropped in points. And if this is what we get, then yes, sir, may I have another? But I'll give it a half a thumb up. I definitely think it's the right change, but I don't think they did enough for the two factions in the squad game here.
I think that this change is probably going to redefine how Separatist squadrons play. People were already taking this, and it's only for the intel. Like, his ability is trash. Having red dice is trash, but having intel is really important. And the fact that now you can take him for 16 points means that it rounds out some squadron balls that you were struggling to fit within 134. And I think that it's pretty critical. I honestly am, because the thing that this allows you to do is usually separate squadrons are like the whole ball is built into two parts. So you have one power activation that's a ton of vulture droids, and it's going to go in and it's going to wipe out as much, if not all, of the opponent's squad ball. And then it has a second activation that is all hyena bombers, and they just go in and bomb you to hell. So the thing that can happen if you are a really tanky squadron list, or if you have Mauler or splash damage, and you can either survive or ignore or kill the vulture droids before they wipe out your stuff, then you can go and disrupt the hyena bombing and cause a lot of trouble, because once the hyenas are engaged, then they kind of just start dropping and they don't really hit back at all. So intel is really important for these builds because it allows you to just jump your hyenas away and almost ignore whatever survives your initial vulture assault. So being able to more easily fit that into 134 and your overall 400-point fleet total, I think is going to be critical. So I think this is a 2 thumbs up easily.
All right. The next one is the addition of Jango Fett. I need to look at this guy. Jango Fett. While attacking a unique... Well, okay. Let's just say this is 2 thumbs up. Let me just say that right off the bat. While attacking a squadron, unique squadron, during your activation, you may deal 1 damage to another friendly squad at distance 1. If the defender... if you do, you may change 1 damage to any face. Interesting. So it has to be within distance 1 of the defender, not distance 1 of you. Okay. Well, he's got grit, bomber, and rogue. This is probably S tier for Sis because they don't have any rogues. So you can do something and then kill off the vulture droids. That's nice. 2 thumbs up. Honey Badger?
Yeah, I think 2 thumbs up. Anything that gives the Clone Wars factions more options, more aces, more variety. He's the only rogue in the Clone Wars factions, so I think that's pretty good. I don't, I don't know how often he'll be taken. Maybe if they're running a light screen, but the Cis squads are kind of set up in um, a weird way in that Watt's the only escort, and to really make Watt work, you need a couple of vultures with him. And then same thing now with Django. To make him work, you need a couple of vultures with him. So if you're doing Watt, Django, and let's say 4 vultures, then you're at a 72-point squad ball. And it does not feel like a 72-point squad ball. But overall, 2 thumbs up. I like his ability. He can kind of hunt down scatter aces and set an accuracy, or if he's going up again, it's only uniques, which I think kind of hurts him a little bit. So he only goes against aces, but maybe if it just let him re-roll against non-unique squadrons, because he's got double red in his anti-squadron, so that's not good. You can easily, get an accuracy, a crit, and then maybe just 1 damage on your black die if you're lucky. So he's going to struggle against squads. You definitely need those other squads to help take out squads so he can start bombing ships. But all in all, yeah, 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, I mostly agree. I think this guy's pretty good. He kind of just has to be 2 thumbs up because he's something brand new and doesn't break the game. Like Anakin. Um, I really do appreciate that they went back and kind of retconned Separatists not getting a squadron in the original Rapid Reinforcements, because it always felt like they were missing something, and now it just the PDF just looks so much cleaner. Um, there's a lot of things to unpack with this card, and I haven't got him on the table personally. I definitely don't think that he's quite S tier strong. I think that he does a lot of really versatile and unique things in this space, but I think that at the way that he's going to end up being played is just going to be, I guess, kind of similar to the way that we see Delta Anakin, in that he's going to help you take out a couple of key squadrons, and then he's going to transition into bombing. I don't know. There's a lot of opinions that I could have, but I just haven't put him on the table yet. So I'm kind of preserving those opinions until later. But I just appreciate that the people who put this update together were able to finish out Rapid Reinforcements. So double thumbs up.
All right, now back on to titles. Invisible Hand went from 9 points to 8 points, and updated verbiage that allowed. Oh yeah, this is about the donut rule. This was an interesting problem that should have gotten fixed a long time ago. So now you can actually use Invisible Hand to place squadrons between distance 1 and 3 instead of just at distance 3. I like this change. This is 2 thumbs up for me.
Yeah, I agree. 2 thumbs up. I think the thing that people overlook a lot with Invisible Hand is it's not like rapid launch bays where you set the squads aside. You set the squads aside during your deployment. So the squads that you're bringing still count for deployment. As long as Invisible Hand's down, you put it down, and then you say, all right, I'm deploying these 2 squads to Invisible Hand. So that's kind of cool. And then fixing it to where it's up to distance 3 is, I feel like that should have just been a call made a long time ago. But at least it's fixed now. So I say 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, this is two thumbs up just because the card actually functions as intended. Um, do I see it having a real impact? Probably not. Um, there's a lot of inherent weaknesses in keeping your squadrons out of play, and there are some strengths to that. Uh, but it's just a little awkward thing, and I don't know. I feel like if you're bringing a Providence, you're really not going to want this title. You're going to want Invincible, and I don't know. It's fine. But I'm glad that it actually works because there's some pretty like casual lists that you can do with it.
All right, Lucid Voice is up next. 8 points to 6 points. I think this was a good change. This guy did not get taken. I think I've only seen it taken once in my several years of playing Armada. And I do kind of like it because it turns something into a brawler, or if you're shooting at it, it can salvo back with 3 red with LTT, which is nice. So I like this change. I think it's 2 thumbs up from me.
Yeah, I like it. I don't think I've ever seen this played, but hopefully now it will with the buff to Providences and the buff to the title. I agree. I like it. The thing that might hurt its play is the Providence carrier not having. I don't think either. Okay, the Dreadnought has Bombard, so it can still take LTTs. But you need some kind of dice fixing when you're chunking back 3 red dice. It's a little scary, easy to blank out. But the only time I ever roll accuracies on 3 red dice is when the other 2 are blanks. But yeah, 2 thumbs up for me.
That phenomenon is so frustrating. Um, I guess this is a middle thumb for me. I I want to like Lucid Voice. I have tried Lucid Voice, and it just doesn't quite get there. Like it, no one's gonna shoot at it when you want them to. People are only gonna shoot at it like they're gonna use a bunch of squadrons to bomb it, and that doesn't really do anything there. Or they're gonna do it when they can guarantee that they have an accuracy or whatever it is. Um, the main issue is like you have to bring it on a Prov carrier, and because you need the defensive retrofit, and then you're only taking thermals, and so I don't know. It's kind of a bad title in my opinion.
All right, up next we have the Galactic Republic. We're going to move on to this faction. We're going to make a little change so that we can just breeze through this. I think we're going to talk about the upgrades and the changes section by section. So to start off with the commanders, Anakin Skywalker got a decrease from 31 to 27. And Obi-Wan Kenobi got a decrease from 28 to 22 points. That's a drop of 6 points. So pretty significant changes in the commanders. Kenobi, I'd only seen taken a couple times. And kind of the reason is because there isn't much redirect in the faction. You don't have a double redirect. So it almost is, it's pretty difficult to use him. Anakin Skywalker, I think, was good enough to take at 31 points, and at 27 points, he's definitely good enough to take. So for me, I think these changes are 2 thumbs up because I want to see some more diversity in the Republic faction. And yeah, that's it. That's it for me on commanders. What about you, Honey Badger?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The Anakin one, along with some of the other changes, we'll probably see Anakin more. Whether he's worth it or even good, I don't think so. Um, it's just too much, too involved in getting him to go off. But the Kenobi one, sure, we're still never gonna see him. I mean, he's just bad. And none of the Gar have the double redirect tokens like other factions or other ships, and so uh, he's not good. We'll see some meme fleets. Somebody wants to play him. You put Kenobi in EST so you can reduce the damage by 2. But that's just not enough. And Lumi's just always going to be better. So I don't know. And then Anakin, like, so disappointing. He's just not good. He's way too much to get him to work. Maybe a 4 points buff will give him some life, but I'm not hopeful. I've tried it, and people say like, oh, Anakin's great. They just compare him to old Anakin or Salvokin, whatever, and that's not even the case. Like, he's just not good. We were talking about it in the chat today. You have to have at least 2 other friendly ships, so it takes 3 ships in distance 1 to 5, and then they have to spend a defense token, and then you can only spend 3 dice. And so, how many times do you get to use them? Because in order to have 3 ships in a fleet, you're gonna have to use some of the weaker ships. Consulars just get destroyed. They have 1 evade, 1 redirect, 4 hull, and 2 shields all the way around, or maybe 1 on their rear. They can't stand up to any firepower. And so once you start losing ships to either them getting destroyed or them running away, now they're out of range and Anakin's useless. It's just, I don't know. Maybe if it was you can set 2 dice instead of reroll 3 dice, maybe it would be worth it then. But yeah, he's just, I don't know. Sure, 1 thumb up because they're both moves in the right direction, but inconsequential. And it's like you're buffing the bottom of the barrel just so they can stay at the bottom of the barrel.
All right, so there's a lot to unpack with what you just said. I'm going to start with like the mild one, which is that Kenobi's still bad. So I've kind of been thinking about this change for a little bit. At 28 points, like, he was by far in a way just the worst commander in the faction. And we haven't gotten to our Republic Admiral tier list. I'm sure that we'll eventually get around to that. But a little bit of a spoiler, I think that most of us will have had him in A tier. In F tier before the change. Maybe it goes up to like B now, but still definitely far from competitive playable. I've kind of been thinking about it though, and I think the best use case that I can think of is now that he's the cheapest commander in the faction, maybe he just kind of ends up in your fleet that you want to buff out in other places. Because one thing that just kind of happens in a lot of games of Armada is on the approach turn. Like, usually it's turn 2, unless combat happens super quickly. You're just kind of getting these long-range pot shots of 1 or 2 damage that just get flung around. And that can be a little bit awkward. Just taking 1 damage on your shield might not feel like a lot. It's just like, sure, I'll take it on the shield, whatever. But on ships that don't have an evade to cancel it, maybe there's some use in just removing some damage outright on those early turns. And then you just have a cheap commander that does nothing for the rest of the game. So I don't know. It might be something worth like messing around with, seeing if you could actually put those points to good use. But I don't know. I'm not really seeing it. On the topic of Anakin, I think that before the change, Anakin was the strongest commander in the faction. And the reason why is Gar struggles with damage output. You have squadrons, and the squadrons are very efficient for their point cost. But the main issue with the squadrons is that all of the bombers are really slow. Speed 2 and Speed 3 just does not cut it. Especially in like meta that is leaning towards faster ships like MC-30s. You're just never going to catch up to stuff. And Gar is really good at winning the squadron war, and they're decently good at taking out slower ships. But The problem is they're not maneuverable and their squadrons are very slow. And so, and all of their ships are just kind of pillow fisted all around. So, what Anakin does to change that is he opens up an avenue of play where you just bring a lot of ships and you just jam as many cheap dice throwers as you can into a list, and it ends up being super efficient. So, a consular charger, the black dice version with X-Rex, is 41 points. That's crazy cheap. And it hits as hard as an ISD. And you can just easily fit 4 of those in a fleet and not even be halfway like full. So it's definitely different. It's not like any other faction is, like Raider spam is a pretty niche archetype for a few different reasons. But what Anakin lets you do is, in a faction with not very good and expensive and limited dice fixing, he lets you fly a lot of ships that are really good at throwing a lot of dice, and he lets you fly them really cheaply. So when they die, because they will, they're not giving up very much. So, for example, if my army of 4 41-point consulars, which is 160-ish points, if I can guarantee that that trades into your 200-point ISD, and I only lose 3 of them, I'm extremely happy. Like, you can just get the table so efficiently, and all that you're really losing out of it is, I don't know, like maybe you lose a clam or 2, or 3 out of your 4 consulars or whatever. I was definitely not an Anakin believer. I flew a very bad list and felt like he was just inefficient and hard to make his ability work. But the fact of the matter is, if you have a lot of things there, it's just going to proc like on its own. You don't even like. You just have to. You can look at the text and be like, "Oh, 1 to 5, that's really weird." You just have to have stuff at long range, and stuff is going to be at long range or closer, and you're going to get to re-roll on every single shot that you take. I definitely don't feel like he's bad, and I maybe aside from Yularen and maybe Bail, I think that Anakin is by far and away the strongest commander in the faction, and he's easily A tier for the entire game.
What did you say about Sloane being bad? What has she won lately? What has Anakin won ever? Like, I mean, maybe now that.
Anakin hasn't
Go ahead.
Anakin hasn't won anything because people are cowards.
Not that they're cowards, he's just terrible. Like, the people
I don't
that
know. I'm thinking
complain
about
about Gar, whatever, whether it's, oh, Gar's OP or this is so strong or Anakin's so good, are the people that never play Gar.
I agree with that. But Anakin is a like one of the considerations for world lists for me. I just like firmly believe that he is that strong, and it's like because I have played him. I just really enjoy the play style, and I think that his ability is super cool.
Alrighty. Good luck, have fun.
All right, next up is the Fleet Command Mercy mission, which went from 0 to 5 points, which changed it to make you pay to bring it. It is no longer free lunch. There is no free lunch in Armada anymore. So now you pay 5 points to bring it, and then the opponent gets 15 points for killing it, which equates to 20, which is what it was before. I do kind of like this because Flagbridge was free lunch for 0 points, and then this was free lunch at 0 points. So now you have to pay an opportunity cost to take this. I guess it's not an opportunity cost. I'm using the wrong word, but you have to pay to bring Mercy Mission now, which I think that's fair. It's a strong card. You should deserve to have to pay 5 points for it. And then if you get your 40 points at the end of the game, there you go. I mean, this kind of cuts into some stuff for the Gar, but I don't know. Maybe this is a good way to balance it out. This is 2 thumbs for me. Up. Honey Badger.
If we would have gotten to the whole thing last week or whenever we recorded last, I had an initial positive reaction to this. Even though I've played Mercy Mission before, I haven't played it to death. I don't get the hype. And certainly all the people that complain about Mercy Mission's existence are, again, people who don't play GAR. But since then, I've ran some lists with Mercy Mission. I've tried building lists with Mercy Mission. And honestly, this 5-point change completely breaks it. It makes it useless. That might be hyperbolic. Might be not be completely useless, but this 5 points was a considerable neutering to Mercy Mission. And the reason is you have to designate a ship for Mercy Mission. If you're putting it on your Venator 2 with Flag Bridge and you have any small, then you have to give it to that small. And you don't necessarily want to have that small in the fight and be able to get destroyed and increase its point cost by 25% if it's on a consular. More than 25%, almost 50%. So to make Mercy Mission work, you had to put it basically on a consular and keep the consular out of the game. The consular really didn't contribute to your fleet. So you were sacrificing a huge amount just to, in essence, make sure you got the 6 if they made you first player and ran from you, which now it's just way too high of a price to pay. That's really what Mercy Mission is good for, but it's just too much at this point. So I give this 2 thumbs down. I liked that they changed it to 5 points and then decreased the fleet value scored by 15, so essentially kept it the same balance of risk reward. But finding 5 points for this in your fleet and on top of what it already cost you is just too much. I give it 2 thumbs down.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything that you just said. I think that there is still a build that fits Mercy Mission, and it's probably like a squadron build with a Venator, 2 consulars, and 134. And that's what I flew in Osmo, and the issue that I had with it is that I just wasn't able to get big enough wins. Because the 40 points from Mercy Mission is on average going to bring you up a TP. But it doesn't really do anything, and you're devoting so many points of your fleet now to just absolutely nothing. Maybe a token from Hondo, maybe like some projection expert shields passed around, but no shots, no squadron commands, no flak, nothing else. And that's just not conducive to like what you want to be spending your points on in a game of Armada when you're limited to 400. So I don't know if it quite 100% of the time kills the card, but it makes the use case like it's not an auto include anymore if you have the offensive retrofit to bring Flag Bridge, and I think that the fleets that want it are now much more niche. But I think that it's not quite dead, but almost.
Yeah, I think the only build where it's still viable is if you're running like double Venator or something with a lifeboat and you can keep the Mercy Mission on the Venator somehow. Whether you're running a Ven 1 and it's got the native slot, or you're just not running a small that you change the fleet command over to. But yeah, I agree.
I have animosity towards this card, I guess. I'm not a fan of it. So that's why I think my position's different. Also, I don't own any Gar, so I can't run it. So, all right.
You have
Up next,
TTS.
Officer. I have TTS. Yes, I can do that. But I would just run Anakin. I'd run Anakin and a bunch of CR70s. Officer Wolf is next. Clone Commander Wolf. He removed the printed keyword, or I guess it's a keyword, in the text so that now squadrons can do the assault that they were supposed to. This is obviously a two thumbs up change, so it works as intended, and now the Gar faction has access to assault, so that's good. I would have liked them to do this and also release the squadron pack too, to get assault and rogue and whatnot, but it's a move in the right direction.
Yeah, I think it's pretty inconsequential. Yay, you fixed it, but it still doesn't do much. One thing I have seen thrown around in the chat is like use it with Plo, and so the accuracy that Plo gives you can be used for assault to get a raid. But there's just no synergy with raid in the Gar faction. It's not like TF and the Sys where you can add dice for raid. There's just no other synergy there, and so I don't know if that's worth it to include Wolf in that officer slot, especially 6 points. I mean, he's not a cheap officer, and it's each squadron that you activate. Each squadron they activate, so up to 3 squadrons gain the keyword. So I don't think it's that powerful. I give it 1 thumbs up. Inconsequential, but a move in the right direction.
Wolf is probably not going to be played once people actually realize that he just doesn't do anything. I don't know. Like you said, there's just no synergy in the faction. There's nothing that you're going to be doing other than putting raid on them and maybe maybe messing over 1 turn worth of command. But even then, like, fine, sure, you did it, and you're not really going to get value out of it. Now, if this was in TF and they had, like, Separatists had Adept or something, I think that would be a really interesting thing. But Gar has the least raid support out of all of the factions. So, still binder fodder. Give it a thumbs down because they put the effort into fixing it, quote, and just didn't fix anything.
All right. Up next, ships in the Galactic Republic. Changes we have are Acclimator Class 1 assault ship went from 66 to 64 points. Drop of 2. Fairly inconsequential. Also doesn't have a defensive retrofit and is incredibly unmaneuverable. So I think that's I'd give it a thumbs down because it's not fixing the problem. I think they did this so it would be taken more. It's like reasonably priced, but I don't know. I feel like it's just not a good token suite, and the maneuverability just isn't there. For the consular, 45 to 42 points. This is the consular class Charger C70. I need to look at the tokens or the. Let's see. This one is the red dice variant. That's pretty nice, honestly. 42 points. That's the same price as a CR90, isn't it? I think it is. So now you can take that and add LTT. So you've got a nice little flak boat, add Anakin, and then you've got dice mitigation. So I think it's a good change. I think they're not survivable enough to be at 45 points. Maybe I was thinking about what Honey Badger said earlier, and I think maybe the way to fix these guys is actually to give them 2 redirects and an evade, I feel like 2 evades just makes them too similar to CR90s. And then Victory 1 Class Star Destroyer got decreased from 75 to 73 points. I don't really know if this is warranted. It's the ability to put SPAT on it, and then the damage output that can have is pretty strong. But it also keeps it directly in line with a Victory 1 of Imperials. And if you add in what's it called? If you add in like heavy ion cannons on the sides, or Devastator, Warlord, I think it kind of balances out generally. So I'm kind of ambivalent about the victory change. So I'm at, I think I said thumbs down for the first one, thumbs up for the second, and the third one just ambivalent. Honey Badger, what do you think about these ships?
Yeah, I can't remember who it was that said it in the chat, and I agree. It's like they're trying to make uh Gar go to Commanderkin, and it just makes me think of Mean Girls. Like, quit trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen. Like, these are all Commanderkin ships. Why only touch one of the acclimators? Both the acclimators are overcosted and terrible. Like, that's the worst ship in the game is the acclimator. The consular, sure, whatever. You only ever see it ran for Mercy mission, but then you use the other one, and it's just bad. Like, the contain is useless. It's just a bad ship. And then the Victory one, I don't know. I don't think people were not playing it because it was 75 points, and now 2 points is going to make a whole heck of a lot of difference. I said it earlier. I think they should have touched the Venators. Especially, they brought down the Imperial Vic by 5 points to 80 points. And if you look at the victories compared to a Venator, the Victory 2 hits harder at longer and medium range, and the Victory 1 hits harder at longer and close range. And those are medium ships that are 20 points less, 20 plus points less. And so they've got, I think, one less shield. No, maybe 2 less shields. One less in the rear, one less in the front, and one less hull. It's like, why are the Venators so many points with their limited ability? But so I would have liked to see them get touched here. I'll give this a half a thumb up. It's a move in the right direction. Largely inconsequential, except for Anakin lists, which, I mean, if that inspires more people to play Gar and try out Gar and, try to bring the faction to the table, then so be it. But the strongest part of Gar is Gar 134. It's the squads, even though the squads are overcosted and they have so few of them to choose from, it's still the strongest part. And Anakin, you want to play squadless. Obi-Wan doesn't help you in the squad game. So I don't know. I think maybe Plo should have been in here, and he should have dropped a couple of points. I've heard the argument that if you are going to play Plo, you're just going to play Yularen for 2 less points and a better squad commander, or if you have a few extra points, you're going to play Bail for 2 more points and a better squad commander. So I think Plo would have been good, maybe even at 20 points, but that might have, or 22, 2 points less than Yularen. But that's all I have to say. Half a thumb up, inconsequential, move in the right direction.
Yeah, I definitely agree that these changes really just seem to benefit Anakin, and that's about it. I do think that Josh, you kind of talked about different defense token suites on the consular, and I think that this defense token suite is the only way that it's not just kind of oppressive. CR90s in Rebels, like, you just staple TRC to them. and that's all that they are. And I love those ships a lot, but you're not really doing anything new or interesting with them. And I feel like if that was just repeated in this faction, it would be very good, but I don't think that it would be interesting. And plus, you got to be able to trash the contain for Anakin rerolls. I think that, yeah, like, honestly, if any of the acclimators needed a change, the acclimator 2 just didn't really feel like it did much of anything. It's just this weird all around, like, tries to be all around good, but it's just all around bad. It has the defensive retrofit slot, and you kind of pay the premium for it, and then also have to pay for the defensive retrofit. Whereas the acclimator already just kind of works as a low to the ground brawler if you need it to. So I don't know. I probably would have done points changes for the acclimator too if I had input, but I don't know. I guess the victory, like, I don't know. It was already a niche ship that you would just put Svats on and like maybe one other upgrade, and I think that's still what it does. I don't think that decreasing it by 2 points changes its role at all. So I will go. I'll go 1 thumbs up for the Vic, just because now it's even with the Empire. I'll go thumbs down for the Clam, and I'll go 2 thumbs up for the Consular, just because I think that spamming little ships is fun. So.
All right. Up next, we have the squadrons. Anakin Skywalker, the Y-Wing, went from 19 to 18 points, which is just shattering, you know. It's good, but you would never take this guy over Counterkin. What do we call him? Squadronkin? He has a
Deltakin.
name. Deltakin, right. I'm sorry.
Our GAR expert leading the podcast over here.
Yeah. I don't do much GAR, honestly. But this is it's kind of nice. Not really warranted. I think the only reason they dropped him by a point was trying to, you know, maybe swing somebody to take this over Deltakin, but you never should do that, honestly. Kit Fisto from 26 to 24 points. 26 points is just too much for a squadron. 24, I think, is the max now out there, aside from Han Solo until he gets fixed. So I think this is kind of a good move for them. I have a thumb up for that. Oddball, 23 to 20 points. Oddball never got taken before. Dropping him to 20 points kind of brings him in line with like the Rebel 2-dice bombers. And yeah, in general, I like this. I'll give this a thumbs up, but I don't have much else to say about it.
All right. Well, strap in because I have plenty to say. Hey, maybe AMG listened to our episode where we had Admiral Tater on here, and he was talking about how before Deltakin came around, Kit Fisto was the man, and so they thought, hey, we'll drop Kit Fisto a couple points, make him the same cost as Deltakin, and then we'll drop the Anakin in a Y-wing, and maybe people will take him. But no, I just don't see Anakin taken. I think maybe the best thing, like if they're completely done with the game, maybe the best thing they could have done was make Deltakin Obi-Wan instead. And that would have shaken things up. Then you could have taken Anakin in the Y-Wing. You could have taken Commanderkin and Obi-Wan. You could have had more synergy with these two. I think that would have been fun to have an Obi-Wan squad and an Anakin bomber on the table at the same time. You know, kind of complementing off of each other. But I digress. I'll give this a thumbnail up because it's a move in the right direction, but it is absolutely not enough. GAR squadrons are so overcosted. I think all of the Delta 7s, the generic should have been dropped 2 to 3 points, but all of the aces should have been dropped 1 to 3 points. Or you can keep them at the same price cost that they are now and just give them all rogue, which is thematic. Jedis don't need to be commanded. Jedis can have rogue and, command themselves and move themselves around the battlefield. And people want to scream and cry like, oh, that's too much. That's too much. No, it's not. Look at Ahsoka or Anakin or any Delta 7 and compare it to Ketsu. Same speed, same hull, same token suite. Ketsu has rogue. She has grit. She's a double blue die bomber. So she can do 2 damage to ships and crits. And she gives up 1 anti-squadron die. And she's 22 points. Yeah, you could make Anakin or Ahsoka the same cost, and it's about the same power level in a squadron. Anakin and Ahsoka are better at anti-squadron, but Ketsu's a double blue bomber. She's better against ships. So I think there's something to be said there. You look at all the cheap Imperial scatter aces or like Tycho and Shara at 17 and 16 points. You look at an A-Wing compared to a Delta 7 generic, and it's like, why is this 50% more? Or you look at a Delta 7 compared to a YT 2400. It's 4 anti-squadron dice. It's got 2 more hull. It's got a black non-bomber anti-ship, whereas the Delta 7 has a blue non-bomber anti-ship. The Delta 7 does have adept, counter, and dodge. But I don't think that's that much more than what Rogue and 2 extra hull bring to the table. You can one-shot a Delta 7. You can't one-shot a YT 2400. So that's my gripe. I'll talk about Kit Fisto. Hey, love it. Probably should have knocked him down a few extra points. Oddball, change his ability, man. Give him a more useful ability, whether it's just a native reroll or a native kind of die set or something, or synergy with Adept, like they like to do with the clones. Clones and Jedi fighting together, cats and dogs, total mayhem. I don't know if I'm going to take him at 20 points. It's just, I can have Oddball or I can have 2 generic Y-Wings. I'm probably going to take the 2 generic Y-Wings. Maybe if Oddball was double brace, but he's just not, he's not quite there at 2 speed, 20 points. And again, if you want to compare somebody, compare Oddball to Merrick Steele. And now they're the same points, or I guess Steele's 1 more point, but Steele is just a lot more powerful. 1 less hull, 3 more speed, double brace instead of brace evade, blue, black, and he automatically gets a hit against squads. He automatically gets a hit against ships. He's got grit. He's got bomber. He's just astronomically better than Oddball for just 1 more point. So I don't know. I don't know if just the people who did the points pricing for Gar, like, just gave them a tax for whatever reason or what, but these squadrons are overcosted. I would have liked to see more out of this points change. Thumbnail up.
All right. Well, so I definitely have less opinions on most of these. I think that the Anakin Skywalker change is like 2 thumbs down. 1 point does absolutely nothing. If this guy was going to be strong, he would be strong because, I don't know. It's not because of the points cost. You're not taking him because of the points cost, and removing 1 point doesn't do anything. So, I think that the Kit Fisto change is a thumbs up. I think that it's kind of a similar situation to DFS, where the intel is a pretty strong thing. This is on a body that can hit a little bit harder and survive a little bit longer, and it's a little bit. Well, no, they're the same speed. Never mind. I definitely don't know if it needs to be 8 points more expensive than DFS. Maybe maybe 20-ish. I don't know. Because like Tell has a similar ability and he's 17. Just no intel. So
And he has a scatter.
right, yeah. I think that maybe you find room for Kit now, but I don't know. I think this oddball change is pretty monumental, though. We shit on him a lot in the squadron tier list, but just reevaluating on this card, he goes a whopping speed 2. I mean, that's 2 speed faster than speed 0. He's got a brace and an evade. That's more defense tokens than a generic Arc 170. He's got bomber. That's a really, really good keyword. And he's got counter, which is counter 1 more than counter 0. And he's got this effect that lets him reroll dice. And you know what can't reroll dice? Any squadron that doesn't have this ability. So I think that Oddball is easily S tier. I mean, he throws 2 dice at ships and 3 dice at squadrons, and he has 7 hull. And yeah, he's probably the best squadron in the game.
I have never been more entertained by hearing Bodhi talk than when he just had those takes on Oddball. I just wanted to throw that out there since my mic was muted and you couldn't hear me laugh. But that's
in reality, it does nothing for him. I was commissioned by Zog to hype up Oddball for a little bit. So
well,
You're getting paid?
Bravo to both.
no,
of
I'm
you.
not getting paid. I wish I was getting paid.
Yeah, we need to make
Subscribe to
some
our Patreon. You can PayPal me. bodhiql@gmail.com. BODHIQL.
All right, moving on to titles for the Gar faction. We have Resolute went from 6 to 4 points. And the reason you don't take this is because Tranquility exists. So this is kind of a moot point. It's kind of nice. But in what world would you take 2 Venators and need to take this title? I've seen this guy. I've been against this guy one time in a single game. Other than that, it's always been Tranquility. So I see this as like a 1 thumbs up. It's nice, but it's not very it's not really going to change much. Honey Badger, what do you think?
Well, so are you going to read any of the other title changes? Or are we just talking about? Oh wait,
Oh, we're
no,
talking
that's
about Gar though.
That's the only one. That's right. Yeah. No, I'm tracking. We're talking about Gar. That's the reason why they listed them last and least. Yeah, I agree. I've never flown Resolute, and I've flown more Venators than anybody else I know. Plenty of double Venator lists, triple Venator lists. I don't know. It's just not necessarily worth it. Tranquility is a very good title. It got super nerfed last go around. I thought maybe they could dial that back a few points this time, but I guess I was the only one thinking that as well. So I give their whole Gar errata 2 thumbs down. That includes this.
Yeah, I think Resolute is interesting. It was never taken because Tranquility exists. I honestly don't think that. Again, it's like the points aren't the reason that you're taking something else. It's because you're probably not flying 2 Venators, and if you are, then you're not going to have room for the stuff that Resolute wants to help benefit, which is like being able to squad and engineer at the same time. So Do I think that this is going to affect anything? No, but I enjoy the concept of the title. I don't know. It's a sideways thumb for the card, and I agree with you, Drew. I mean, all of the other factions are significantly changed by this update. And the only thing that gets positively or negatively affected, honestly, across the entire Republic faction, is Anakin. And it just feels so close because right now, like I can say with uh, like I don't know, I feel firm on the fact that Gar is just the worst faction in the game right now because all of the things that it does, either another faction can do a little bit better, a little bit faster, a little bit more maneuverable, or all of the things that it does, it just like is countered by things that are good in the meta. Uh, the thing that kind of gatekeeps Anakin are like rogue lists because your ships have really good flak, but that only really helps when uh, Steph is staying put throughout a whole turn. I don't know. So yeah, it's so far away from helping the faction that I feel like needs it. It did so much for Separatists. I feel like Separatists are really, really good now. And I just can't say the same thing about Republic, and it makes me sad.
Okay, now we're moving on to upgrade cards in general. We're going to start off with fleet support. Repair crews went from 4 points to 3. This is, I don't really know why this happened. It's a really good card. I think it's just not taken very often, and so people decided to decrease the cost. But effectively, what this does is it does 3 points of engineering on someone else's turn, which is great. It's similar to like projection experts. Effectively, does 4 points of engineering on another ship's turn. But it's already a good card, and you can fly this alongside another ship that has uh like a contain or something, and then just be healing damage and make a tank even tankier. So it's pretty good in like Starhawk fleets. It's obviously really good in SSD fleets. Uh, it's super good at SSD fleets, and I don't really know why we're going from 4 to 3 points. I use this card, so I like the change, but in general, I think it's kind of a sideways thumb for me. It doesn't really change much. Slicer Tools now allows you to add raid tokens in addition to changing a ship's command dial, and no longer starts the game exhausted. I think this is a good quality of life change. There's been a couple times where I run this card and I forget to unexhaust it before I go and try and use it. So that was kind of a painful experience. But I do like the added ability of adding a raid token. Um, if you're not changing somebody's dial, it makes it usable instead of uh, just moot whenever someone's already flipped over their dial and they don't have any more. So in general, I think Repair Crews, Sideways Thumb, Slicer Tools, 1 thumb up.
Uh, yeah, I don't know. I mean, the fleet support, these help the Civil War factions. They're the ones that can take the fleet supports. In the Gar and Sis, you have to take it either on the hard cell that we're talking about or on like a Pelta, and that's a lot of points. Um, it's much more than the 18 point or 23 point flotillas that the other factions have. So I don't necessarily like these two things getting buffed without the other factions gaining access to them as well. There's just so much that they don't have access to, and uh, the slicer tools really hurts bail lists. So that's another Gar archetype that is just neutered by this update because with Bale you want to have your Venator doing squadrons because it's got the Squadron 5, and so you're trying to use it as a battle carrier, and then you're using your Bale dials to repair and nav, but then if they can just slice you, then you can't command um, squadrons, and there's really nothing you can do about it. So I'm not a huge fan, um, but whatever. One thumb down.
I feel like the repair crew change is probably not going to do much in the grand scheme of things. I think the only fleet that I can think of that was flying this competitively were one copy and SSDs, and the change to price I think kills off SSDs as we know them. So um, I honestly don't imagine this card. I mean, maybe in some casual fleets. The slicer change, I think, does a lot. On the day of release, I flew a TF 1726 fleet that had two slicers as the only source of raid. And it wasn't quite enough, but it gave a lot of utility that B2s just don't. So I think finding the medium between your B2s, maybe Jedi Hostage, but probably you don't even need it anymore, and then two hard cell transports with slicers. And it feels like a really compact and super killy aggressive fleet. Um, I think that the fleets that were already flying slicers are super happy about this. And the fleets that were on the fence on maybe it was a flex slot if they didn't really need their fleet command or a fleet support slot or something. I think they're happy about it too, but I don't think that people are going to go out of their way for it. It's a 7-point fleet support, so um, I'll give one thumbs up all around because I think that erratas are more interesting than just points changes. Or I guess one thumbs up for the slicer, sideways thumb for the repair crews.
All right, up next is the ion cannon slot. We have a lot of changes here with high capacity ion turbines going from 8 to 6, 2-point drop. Leading shots going from 6 to 5, 1-point drop. NK7s going from 10 to 6, which is a substantial change. And overload pulse going from 8 to 6. And then in the other direction, we have PDICs going from 4 to 6 points. I think these are some excellent changes. Leading shots wasn't getting taken because LTT was just stapled to every ship that wasn't. I don't know. It was stapled to all kinds of stuff. So leading shots may come back into the meta, which is nice. NK7s has never been in the meta because of its high cost. And the weird thing about using NK7s is that you use it the first time, and usually people just toss a token they don't like, and then the next time it actually hurts them. But by that time, you're already in turn 5, and so you're either passing each other. If they know what they're doing, they may have an escape vector already planned. So it's just, it's okay. At 6 points, it's worth thinking about, but in my opinion, you need more than one of these to make something happen. Okay, overload pulse going from 8 to 6. I've heard some other people say, why did this happen? I kind of feel the same way. I think it's a little too strong to be 6 points. PDICs was necessary going from 4 to 6 points. It was taken all the time. It's way too good for what it does at 4 points. At 6 points, it sounds kind of reasonable. But still, every shot at close range. I don't know if that's right. Every shot? Every shot. Are you sure? High capacity ion turbines going from 8 to 6 points is really cool. I love this. And I would love to put it together a fleet that has this on something like an interdictor, and then add in Ramadi, because I talked about previously about how Ramadi is actually really good against smalls that are flanking, and this makes it even better. So if you're shooting out the sides, which is where the flanking is occurring, typically, so you add a dice. So if you're using interdictor, it's 3+1. Add this one, so it's 4+1. Add Ramadi, 4+2. It ends up being effectively like a victory front arc on a small ship. If you add discaps, then it's at long range. So you can't be obstructed, and then you get 6 dice out the side for a turn. I think it's really good. This is a really good card. People should take it. And then you can add Captain Nita for rerolls, so you don't really need PDICs anymore. So throw this on Interdictors, people. Overall, I think this is like a 2 thumbs up change in the ion cannon slots. The only one I'm really skeptical of is the overload pulse being too high. Honey Badger, what do you got?
What are ion cannons? I play a lot of Gar. Just kidding, but yeah, again, no help to Gar, but I digress. I agree with some of your takes. I agree that PDIC should have got nerfed. I don't know if 2 points is enough. I think it's still a really good defense. Even at 6 points, I think there should be some sort of cost associated with it, whether you have to spend a token to refresh it every round or whatever, some kind of extra cost, which would not have been that difficult to do and wouldn't have, I don't think it would have killed the card. I think your take on Overload Pulse is interesting because people used to say Overload Pulse is not good. It's one of those that you read and it's like, oh, this is super powerful. And then you play with it and it's like, oh, yeah, this kind of sucks because they get to spend all of their defense tokens before you do the exhaust. So you have to have a boarding troopers or another big shot coming in to really stress their tokens. So I'm fine with it going down to 6. I think Overload Pulse works well in Radis lists. I think Radis got a huge buff in this errata overall. High capacity ion turbines, sure, I'm fine with. You want an extra blue die out of the side. 8 points seemed quite a bit. So I think that 6 is better. I would have maybe even dropped it down to 5. Leading shots, I don't know what you're talking about. You never saw leading shots. I saw leading shots a lot, and I think now it's even more valuable because LTTs are not available to the rerolls, not available to most ships now. So I think we definitely will see leading shots taken more. Leading shots doesn't help you at long range, though. For larges, it helps mediums if they're using decaps or whatever. But you have to spend a blue die. So maybe if you take the turbo laser that adds a blue die if you're at a slower speed, then you can leading shots. But that's one interesting note for leading shots is it usually doesn't work at long. NK7s, yeah, that's a cool one. The defender gets to choose, which I think is balanced, and it's an exhaust, so you can't proc it twice in one activation. It hurts the Civil War or the Clone Wars factions more than the other ones because the Clone Wars factions need their defense tokens more. They don't have double sets of defense tokens like most of the Galactic Civil War ships do. And they don't have like spare tokens to just, some of them have contains. That's usually the first one to go, but that's only a few ships, and then after you spend that, then what? So I don't know. It kind of helps the side that didn't need help. Overall, I give it 1 thumbs up for the totality of the changes.
I think this is one of the slots that's super interesting. And the first thing that people look at is point defense ion cannons. It was kind of a bane for a little while. I personally didn't have any issues with it. So I guess a lot of people are upset about the change because they're worried that squadless fleets now lose a defense against squadrons. And a lot of people are happy about the change because they thought that the card was busted. And then it seems like you guys are somewhere in the middle where you feel like you're unhappy because it wasn't far enough. Um, I don't know. I think that the interesting thing is that it wasn't a very major change, just going up 2 points, but leading shots coming down one so that it's now cheaper means that while point defense ion cannons may have been the go-to in the past, I don't think that that is going to be the case anymore. Now you're willingly choosing to take it over something that's cheaper. Um, so I don't know. I like to kind of see how Worlds goes and the Second Chance Vassal World Cup tournament, and see the statistics on it. Like I said, I personally didn't have any issues with PDIC. I felt like it was fine. I think that there was only a select few ships that really abused it, and namely like ISDs and the Starhawk. Um, and I think those ships are going to be perfectly fine without it. And the ships that need it, like maybe the Providence, can still take it. And even the ISDs, like you're going to find the 2 points if you feel like you really need this card. But it's one of those things that kind of compounds with like the Jendon change and the Squall change if you having all of those cards. I think that Overload Pulse is pretty interesting. I don't think that it is super benefited by the 2 points because, kind of like Drew was saying, it's not a super great upgrade card. I agree NK7s is pretty major, going down 4 points. I don't know if it like super hurts the Clone Wars factions, because if they're really scared about it, they can just thermals the blues away. And I think that high capacity ion turbines is pretty interesting because I'm a big fan of dice add rather than rerolls. I think that it makes dice pools a little bit more swingy, but once you get to close and medium range, that kind of evens out. I think that the long range dice pool should be swingy, medium range a little bit less, and then close range, like you should have it consistent. So having some dice add at medium range, I think, is an interesting effect. But leading shots is the one that I want to talk about for a little bit longer, because I think that this is going to be one of those meta-defining things. In the past, and it was before I started playing, but leading shots was kind of the go-to ion cannon slot pick. And I think that it might start drifting back towards that again. I think that being at 5 points, now less than PDIC, means that you're going to be hard-pressed to take the more defensive approach when you can just go and blow stuff up more efficiently. I think that the meta is going to start shifting more towards like a super killy all-around kind of thing. I think that the fleets that are really benefited by these changes are ones that want to get in and fight and be aggressive. And having an option that lets you fight back is going to be critical. A lot of the time, like blue dice are like they're never going to be swinging. They're never going to give you a high damage output. So using them to help fix the rest of your dice pool is pretty important. And I think now, instead of just being a niche card that you see on SSDs, because PDIC is not a huge ship, I think that leading shots is going to see a lot more play. So don't really feel the need to go through like all of them one by one, but I think ion cannons overall is a double thumbs up. I think that this slot is one of the ones that's going to change how the meta is quite a bit.
Yeah, I just want to add I agree with you. With the loss of LZT amongst all the Civil War factions, the reroll ability that leading shots give you is going to be a big deal. But I think this is also going to add into so flanking metas, so like CR90s in your side arcs are going to be a kind of a big deal for the Civil War factions. If you're not like a MC80 pickle, because you'll be shooting dice and then you'll have to spend the dice to reroll anything. So it may actually be more like viable to take high capacity ion turbines instead if you're worried about flanking. But I think people are gonna, like you said, this is gonna become something that's really hot in the meta because you need those rerolls. If you're gonna be rolling a dice pool that's 8 dice out the front of an ISD plus whatever else, then it's gonna be critical that you have damage when you need it and you don't whiff. I have seen some damage rolls that are just plagued with accuracies, So the rerolls are going to be coming from leading shots. It's going to be taking a lot. And then flanking chips, in my opinion, are going to become more viable because you don't want to spend 25% of your dice to reroll unless you absolutely have to. So side arcs are going to be more viable against ISTs and some other ships. All right, up next is offensive retrofit. We should have 2 changes here. Rapid launch base now activates by discarding the card instead of requiring a squadron command, and it's not printed on this sheet, but it spans the range from distance 1 to 2 instead of just distance 1. This is absolutely huge because now you can drop B-wings at distance 2 instead of right next to your ship. So effectively, when you drop them, they're going to be going speed 2, and then once they get activated, perhaps by another ship, they're going to be another speed 2. So they go from being off the board from going somewhere around speed 4. So they can jump out and snatch you really fast now, which I think is excellent. I want to see the B-wings get play, and I think this is a huge change that's really positive for the game. But I guess I should also be honest and say that this helps the Rebels out more than any other faction. The Imperials don't need speed unless they're taking their rogue YV666s, which no one does. So the B-wings are probably the only ship in the game or squadron in the game that really needs it. I'm thinking about the arcs, but the arcs you can take fighter coordination team on the Peltas and just push them around, and that becomes really effective. So yeah, I would like to see this used more. But that's just me. I love this card. Reserve Hangar Deck went from 3 points to 4 points, which I don't necessarily like this change. I'm kind of ambivalent about it. I don't really see the hurt that this card must have hurt someone in order for this to happen, and I don't really think it was warranted. So I'm gonna go with thumbs up on the rapid launch base, probably 2 because I really love that change, and then on Reserve Hangar Deck I'll go to 1 thumbs down.
Interesting. I am going to do 1 thumbs up on the rapid launch base because you can no longer do this after you use flight controllers. So that combo doesn't work anymore. I like that it's extra distance and that you don't have to use a squadron command to deploy your squads. But like I said, no more flight controllers makes me big sad. I can't run my Venator in there and then drop a bunch of arcs and plop them all out. Reserve Hangar Deck. I want to give it 2 thumbs up. I think it should have gone to 5 points. That's going to be a very unpopular opinion, but I think it should have gone to 5 points. Other than that, I'm super happy that they added points to this card. It definitely needed it. You can bring back an 11-point TIE Interceptor, and it's got 2/3 of its hull. That was way too oppressive. And just the amount of flexibility this gave you with light screens of vultures and TIE fighters. You can even use it with the droid tri-fighters for the Sis. I will say the only time I've used Reserve Hangar Deck was in a Yularen fleet. I used it with a generic V19 because I could send Anakin out there with Axe, of course, let him get alphaed, hope he didn't die. Sometimes he'd survive. And then I could just move my V19 out there. So now they've got to shoot him and I can repair Anakin. and then they shoot the V19 and it dies, and then I bring it back with reserve hanger decks, and then I just repair it with Yularen. So that was a fun little interaction that I did, but that's really the only time I've used reserve hanger decks outside of like a light screen with Sys. If I'm running like 4 vultures and a bunch of reserve hanger decks to keep my screening ability. Yeah, 2 thumbs up. Good to go.
I think that Rapid Launch Base is just completely different now. You both touched on kind of the pros and cons and the somewhere in betweens where, I mean, it's just so new. I think that people have the right to experiment with it. Earlier, I kind of touched on that Invisible Hand is not the greatest effect because there are some downsides of keeping your squadrons off the board. And I think that RLB is kind of going to fall into a similar place where people mess around with it for a little while, but then it stays out of the meta. I think that the reserve hanger deck change is going to do quite a bit. And this is one of those compounding changes where 1 point doesn't look like a lot, but usually the fleets with reserve hanger deck are going to have 2 copies, maybe 3. And they're also going to have some of the other things that we saw points changes on, like Jendon. I don't know if it kills the card, but it's a whole lot less convincing because being at 4 points now puts it at the same cost as boosted comms. And I think that boosted comms is just all around a more powerful card. Honestly, I think that like what makes me sad is I was just getting to the point where I was considering taking some Z95s, and just 4 Z95s and a couple of reserve hanger decks can really keep things stalled for a bit. And now I'm not sure if I want to, because while I can see the math of 3 points to bring back an 11-point interceptor, that's pretty good. But now 4 points to bring back a 7-point Z95 feels less good. So I don't know. I will give a 2 thumbs up to Rapid Launch Base because I'm interested to see how it goes. And I'm going to give a sad thumbs up to Reserve Hanger Deck. I think that the change was warranted. It might be a little bit too far, but I'm a little upset about it. But it might be positive. I think it is a bit positive.
All right, up next is the officers. So 3 changes here. Damage control officer went from 5 to 3, -2. Support officer went from 4 to 2. And veteran captain went from 3 to 2. I think the most substantial change across the board, I don't know, there's a lot of changes here, but veteran captain going for 2 points is huge. No longer do you have to pay an extra point to get a command token. And you don't have to do the negative effect of Hondo, which is give your opponent 2 tokens. Which it's actually pretty bad. Like there've been several times where I need these 2 tokens and I don't want to give this token away, but I have to. So if I give an engineering token, then I'm effectively giving a large ship 2 points for a shield. And that might change the game. Like if he moves 2 shields or gains a shield back before you swing, or you're trying to hang on and survive and you give him a Confire token and then he gets a reroll that secures a kill and you lose the game, that sucks too. But the worst part, I think, is the squadron token. Because if you're going up against a 134 and he's got bombers, he can activate the ship he was already going to activate and then throw in a 2-dice bomber in at you and make you feel hurt before you actually get hit. So Hondo there's a lot of trade-off to Hondo, which I don't think people take into account as much as they should. But veteran captain being 2 points is huge. Absolutely huge. Support officer, it's nice that it went down to 2 points. I think you could have just stayed at 3 points instead. But this is kind of it's like Jam and Slicer insurance, and you may see it on like an SSD or a Starhawk, but I doubt you'll see it on much else. Damage control officer is an excellent card, very good, very effective. And I don't want to say it, but its best place is on the SSD where there's 2 contains and you can just prevent all those crits from coming in. All the HIEs, all the black crits, overload pulse, you can cancel that. So this is, if it's not stable to your SSD, I don't know what you're doing. Honestly, you should have it there. So overall, I think the changes I think are, I'll give them 2 thumbs up. Damage Control Officer is a better card than you think. So you should be taking it a lot more than I see it out there. It should be out there more. So 2 thumbs up from me. What about you, Honey Badger?
Yeah, I like the changes. I think 2 thumbs up also. I think the reason that people don't play these 3 cards though are because they take officer slots. There are just so many officers out there that you like. That's why GR75s and flotillas are so good, because you can get another ship for cheap to put an officer on. And you think of like the Rebels have Ezra Bridger, or Hondo, like you said, or Darth Vader on the Empire. All of those officer slots that you really want to find a place for them, on top of the ones that make your ships go, like Officer Lando and the Rebels, Captain Nita in the Empire. Clone nav officers for Gar are super strong. We've talked about Sis with Teeks and Sandhill and Shumai and the other one, Rune Hako. So it's. I almost wish that you could take a generic officer for free on every ship. Like maybe there's a unique or there's 2 officer slots on every ship, and the rule is you can only put 1 unique officer per ship or something like that, so that some of these other good officers could get played. Damage control officer, and maybe that would make them a little too powerful if you guaranteed them slots. But yeah, I agree. I think damage control officer is good. The only problem is EST exists, and EST works on every shot you take. Damage control officer works on only shots where special crits are coming in. So that's the struggle I find for DCO. But all in all, I think they're really good changes. I like the buffs to these officers. 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, I think that there's some things to unpack here. I'm definitely a little less high than Josh, you are. I think I find myself mostly agreeing with Drew on these, that you just want your faction-specific officers most of the time. And there are some fleets that I have built that want veteran capped and are happy with these changes. But while there are downsides to Hondo, I think there's a lot of upsides too. Like, you get 2 points for 2 command tokens, and you give your opponent some that are like slightly less useful. And that happens more times than not, I feel like. Sure, it could screw you, but pirate's gonna pirate, I guess. I think that the damage control officer one is kind of interesting, because now it falls in line with something that I might actually want to take. Like, I don't know. I think that you're right that it's better on something like the SSD, maybe even the Starhawk, where you have multiple officer slots already. And so you're not really punished by taking it, because the fact of the matter is, like, sometimes your opponents are just not going to have any critical effects, and so it is useless. But then in the times where it is useful, it might win you the game. I don't know. I would rather have EST, like Drew said. And then what's the last one? Support officer. I don't know. I think that this is one of those like new player aid officers that I mean it's probably the best one of the options now, but I think that it's probably not very useful. I don't know. I might just go like thumbs neutral on these. I don't see it affecting a whole lot.
All right, next is Ordnance. We've got expanded launchers going from 13 to 8 points, drop of 5 total points, and rapid reload going from 8 to 4 points. So a drop of 4, obviously. So expanded launchers going to 8 points is actually kind of insane. What you can do now with a demolisher, it's nuts. It's nuts, man. Listen, uh, you last first. Let's hope you. Let's say you have a shot after movement, 4 black, 2 red, plus a Confire, and then you last first again out the side. You ram, and then you shoot again out the front. It was already nuts, right? But the adding the 2 black dice out the front at 13 points, it wasn't worth it. But now, like, unless you're just terrible at navving and you need the X-Rax to shoot out the side instead of the front, I don't see people unless, and also if you're looking for the points, then you'll try to avoid it. But X-Rax is super good right now. It's really good on the MC75 in both variants, and then very good on Demolisher builds. Like, this is going to be nuts. This is going to be crazy. Also, rapid reload is going to 4 points. I think that's right. I think that's okay. At 8 points, like, nobody takes this stuff other than X-Rax previously. So I'm on board with this. But which one's better? I think the rapid reload is probably better on the large base ships, where you can get a double arc and get a nice, strong die roll on both double arcs. But if you're on a small and you have such maneuverability that you can put it wherever you want, I think the expanded launches is probably better. So I think these are both like positive changes. Expanded launches is just going to be kind of nuts out there. So I'll give this probably 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, I'm for it. 2 thumbs up, 100%. Expanded launchers was way too much at 13. You're never going to get 4 uses out of it. It's going to be hard to get 2 because people are just going to run out of your front arc. But if you can get 2, it pays for itself over X-Rax. I really like this rapid reload change. I think Venators, if they don't go down in points, they should have an extra die out of the side. They should be 6 and 5, kind of like the Providences are 6 out of each side and 5 out of the front. The Venator should be 6 in the front and 5 out of each side. The Venator 2 should have an extra black and maybe throw in a blue for the Ven 1. I don't know. It's a trash ship that I stopped playing a while ago. But with rapid reloads on a Ven 2, if you do Clone Captain Zack, who lets you add a die out of side shots, if you double arc, you can do a double rainbow twice. One out of the front and one out of the side. And I think that's pretty cool. But it's kind of hard to get that double arc with a flying brick. But I do like the rapid reload change down to 4. I think that's good. I like the expanded launchers down to 8. I think that's good. And I think that brings them both more in line with the choice of, do I want to take these or do I want X-Rax? Do I want to just hit and run, drop my X-Rax, or do I want to try and stay around for some sustained shots and keep using either my side or my front arc? I wish you could take them both, but they're both modifications, unfortunately. So you have to choose one or the other, or if you have 2 ordnance slots, you can choose one of them and put on X-Rax, which could be pretty strong too. 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, this is a 2 thumbs up for me as well. I think it's very clear that this is the intention that I like to say AMG, but it was all Dennis. Um, this was the intention for the future of the game. For a very long time now, we've been in a long range focused meta where stuff like LTT and TRC are common because they help your long range dice be more consistent, so you can kill stuff and then fly away. And I think that while I enjoy games like that, other people just do not. I think that it's more fun for the casual player, and honestly, going to be more fun for a lot of people to just get in and fight. And I think that decreasing the cost of both of these cards promotes that a lot. You mentioned the math behind why would you want. So obviously, it's better to have something that can affect multiple shots. The thing that sucks about Extrax is once you blow your load, it's out, it's done. And I'm not sure to me, I feel like Extrax is still worth it. These changes did not invalidate that card. A lot of the small ships in particular would rather just have one use of it because it's cheaper, and when they die, it's not like it's giving your opponent more value. But the ships that can take advantage of this, and like you were talking about Venators, I think Venators really, really like these changes. I think that now, when you have a double ordnance slot, the few ships that have that, like the what's it called, the Imperial Venator and the Ordnance Cruiser MC-75. In the past, you might be like, well, I'll take Extrax for sure, and then I don't know, maybe I'll throw in APT or one of the ones to help your flak or something like that. But now it's super lethal because you can take Extrax and expanded launchers and have a great time. So yeah, I think that these are going to make a huge change in the meta, and I think it's going to be super fun too. So double thumbs up.
All right. Next up, support teams. Engineering team went from 5 points to 3 points, and nav team got a phrasing clarification, but didn't really change. So, engineering team going from 5 points to 3 points is really the only thing we're talking about. This is great. This is actually super good. So, there's other things you can do to boost engineering value, and one of them is redemption, which also saw a points decrease. We already talked about. But this is actually pretty good, and I'm not entirely sold on this being better than Auxiliary Shields team, but I think it's close. It's close now. Auxiliary Shields team is a nice buff at the beginning of the game to make your small ships a little more survivable, especially the Nebulon, which is kind of what I feel like it was purpose built for. But not nav team, excuse me. Engineering team is super good on other ships as well, like an interdictor. So I've flown a competitive list with an interdictor and Captain Nita, and I shuttle like a token over to it, and then with an engineering dial you get 5 plus 3 plus 1, so 9 engineering points. So you just take a hit, you clean up, and then you go back out there and show them what you got. So that's arguably the interdictor's not really one that's going to hang out in the battle too long, but it usually is going to be doing engineering commands in order to stay alive, regardless of what it's doing. So I like this change. I think it's 2 thumbs up. I will say, I know some people are probably out there saying Projection Experts is probably the one that's stapled to it because it's keeping something else alive along with targeting scramblers. But if you aren't worried about that and you bring engineering team instead, then you can keep it alive pretty comfortably, in my opinion. So 2 thumbs up.
Sure. I mean, eh, I don't know if these are going to get played. I've never played them. I think The support team slot is pretty much either engine techs, fighter coordination team, projection experts, or auxiliary shield team. I think I might have seen engineering team a few times. I don't know if I've ever seen nav team, but I think they're kind of inconsequential, so I really am ambivalent. I'll give them a gladiator thumb.
I'm in the same boat. I really don't care about this. Sure, cool.
All right. So much excitement from the other side.
We're getting there. We're getting there. Hit the
Yeah.
next upgrade slot.
This is the good stuff right here, the turbo lasers. We have DTTs, which went from 5 to 4 points, which is, that's just okay. Heavy fire zone, 4 points to 2 points. I think this is exceptional. And gladiators are going to love this probably. Other flak boats as well. Heavy turbo laser turrets went from 6 points to 4 points. I like that change. A lot of times, if you're going to be hitting something and use this upgrade, which honestly I've never seen it taken except one time in a casual game where somebody forgot to put on a turbo laser slot. Excuse me. This happened like last week. The guy had LTT but couldn't take it anymore, and so he chose HTTs just because. Anyway, and it worked out for him a little bit, but it was either in the olden days it was either this or XI7s, and XI7s was always the one you wanted because it made sure damage went through. Because instead of whatever, I'm getting lost. LTTs now is essentially the same, except they fixed the wording to where you can add 2 dice to the first squadron you attack, and instead of what I believe it had to be like the first thing you did was attack the squadron, which some people would forget about. And now it has the reroll on red when attacking ships for only Clone Wars factions. XX9's got a decrease from 5 points to 2 points. I don't know why that happened. I don't really think it was warranted. I mean, it wasn't getting taken, but people took it because they wanted it, and taking it down to 2 points doesn't make too much sense to me. All right, let's go from top to bottom for me real quick. DTTs, I think this in the context of LTTs going away, I think this is a thumbs up change for 1 thumbs up. I like DTTs, and with LTTs existing, it was just never taken. There was no reason to ever take it. So 1 thumbs up for dropping it in points and making it somewhat, I don't know, reasonable to take. A lot of these are now under 5 points, and the really good, I don't know, I would say really good. There's other cards are quad turbo laser cannons are 10 points. Man, I'm getting tired. I'm just slowing down over here. Some of these changes I don't really see the need. Like XX9s, it's not really necessary. Let's see. LTT, I kind of like that they changed it at all because it was just stapled to everything before. But limiting it, I feel like they should have changed it in some other way. Maybe, and then made DTTs the other half of LTTs. I always felt like LTTs should have been 2 cards. So they buffed the Clone Wars factions by nerfing the Civil War factions. Overall, I think this is let's say DTTs is a thumbs up. Heavy Fire Zone, 2 thumbs up. Love that. I'm going to be flacking at long range, and if I take a double dice, I can shoot through obstruction. HTTs, see this as it's like a 1 thumbs up. It's okay. LTTs change. I commend them for changing it away from how stapled and how routinely taken as was. Like, they changed something. That's good. I kind of wish they would have just taken half the text away and then made DTTs the LTT. So, but that's just me. I'm not the game designer, so. XX9s, I don't like that change. So, thumbs down for that one. Sorry, I got kind of lost in the weeds on that one. We've only got one left after this, though. So, Honey Badger, why don't you pick up from here?
All right, and I'll do a real quick point of order. The LTT change, when re-rolling a red die while attacking a ship, only works for ships with the bombard keyword. It's not all Clone Wars ships. So it's only 5 ships in the game. You've got the Acclamator 2 and the Ven 2 from Gar. You've got both Munificents, the Comms Frigate and the Star Frigate, and then the Providence Dreadnought. And those are the only 5 ships in the game that have bombard. So those are the only 5 ships that can use LTTs to re-roll while attacking a ship. And then the squadron text, it just made the card work. I think LTTs had 2 or 3 different erratas because the wording was terrible, and it was like while attacking the first squadron, but now it just says while attacking the first, or originally said while attacking the first squadron during your activation, and now it's while attacking the first squadron during an attack. So you can do it on your first attack, your second attack, or even Ord pods, which a lot of people didn't know that interaction, but it used to work. It still works. It's more clarified now. So you can LTT on Ord pods. Yeah. So same point cost. For heavy fire zone, I mean, how many ships does that really affect? Not too many have blue dice that you're going to want to take heavy fire zone just to be able to shoot flak squadrons at long range, because then you're not taking LTT. And so yeah, I don't know. I'm fine with heavy fire zone change. HTT is a really interesting card that I'm surprised doesn't get played more, but it's just real easy for your opponent to get around. All they do is brace, and then they save their other defense tokens for another attack. So I think that should have came down. DTT definitely should have came down, and so it did, and that's going to be your main replacement for LTTs. The only thing that stinks about DTT is it's a modification. So you're not going to be able to run that with other mods. And then XX9s down from 5 to 2. That is going to benefit fleets that have dice fixing, that can set crits, and kind of plays into the next thing. But the only thing we have left to cover is WBTs, which lets you change an accuracy to a crit. Ship or cards like TRCs and Screed, Kraken, they all do the same thing. They can let you change to crits, but you got to get through the shields first. And one common thing I hear is, well, if you're getting your crits through, you're dealing face-up damage to ships, you're probably already winning. So this is one of those cards that maybe it'll help you finish off a ship that you're already close to killing. Or maybe you can proc it with APTs if you take the officer that, or it's either an officer or a weapons team. I think it's a weapons team that lets you resolve 2 different crit effects. So then you're dealing 2 face ups, not with APTs, but your APTs and then the next ones if you get APTs through face up. Or like ACMs, you're hitting the sides and you're getting a face up. Maybe it would also be good in Dodonna's list where you get to deal them the face up, so you're doubling the chances of getting something that really helps you. Overall, I think good changes. I don't know how I feel about LTT with Bombard. I feel like it's another one of those quit trying to make fetch happen. Like, oh, we put all these keywords on all these ships, and now we're actually going to use one. I I don't know, but I wish they would have just made it Clone Wars only, and so all the Clone Wars ships could have still taken it. But oh well. 2 thumbs up.
All right, so this is the interesting one, the controversial one. I think most of these, I'm just going to give like the real brief version because I think my co-hosts had pretty solid opinions. I think that Heavy Fire Zone is pretty garbage. I don't think that you should have been playing it at 4 points, and I don't think that you're going to play it at 2 points either. It only really benefits, well, correction, it would have benefited ships with 2 turbo laser slots that had 2 blue dice if those ships could also take LTT. But there are no ships that meet those qualifications in the game, except for the Super Star Destroyer, but it already has red flak. So I don't care about this card. I think Heavy Turbo Laser Turrets is kind of in the same boat. It's just countered by thermals and countered by good play, I feel like. If I'm going to take one of the similar cards, it's just going to be XI7s. Dual Turbo Laser Turrets absolutely should not be a modification. I also kind of wish that it was just straight up reroll, so that way you could use it on salvos. I wonder why it's not, like, it was printed before salvos, and I don't, like, reroll effects existed at that point in the game, so I don't know why that it's worded the way that it is. I think that it's a fair consideration at 4 points, though. XX9, I kind of crapped on for a very long time anytime I would see this in anybody's list. Drew said that, yeah, it's like a win more card, and I think that that's very much correct at 5 points. At 2 points, it might be worth considering, especially on some of the double turbo laser slot things. Like, I think a Simoon could maybe reasonably consider this, maybe with XI7 or something. I think the interesting thing is that it's 2 points to ignore their contain. And even if you're not getting the second, like, damage, like, ignoring the contain can provide some value. Do I want that more than dice fixing? Probably not. But without LTTs and most things, then maybe you start looking at some other options. Now, the big one is LTT. I think that this change is just about perfect. LTT was the most played upgrade in the game. I don't have the stats on that, so I can't back it up. But I'm just so sick of it. I am so tired of everyone just rerolling a die on every single shot that they take. I'm tired of people not knowing how that it works. You know, it's so easy for, like, to make the mistake, or I guess it was easy to make the mistake. I had an issue at Osmo where a guy tried to LTT on every single shot, like flak shot, against Prox Mines. And I just went with it because I didn't remember how it worked either. But you could only LTT on one thing. And I think that the ruling's clarification is it's beneficial. Like, just say, you do it on the first shot, that's it. You exhaust it, that's done. I think that that's important. I think that limiting it to Bombard only, while it's kind of an unprecedented and weird thing, and it feels shoehorned in a way, I think that that is an interesting way to solve the ubiquity problem. I think that the ships that really, really need LTT, like Munis and Venators, still get to use the card. And all of the ships that didn't really need it, but were playing it because it was just strictly the best, like ISDs and Starhawks, now have to think twice about it. So one thing that a lot of people are kind of complaining about is, we lost a major dice fixing thing, which I understand, and I definitely get that that can be frustrating. But I think that, the game is forcing us to engage closer. Go to medium range and use your leading shots, or go to close range and get some black dice and then use ordnance experts. I think that the slight scarcity now of rerolls in the increase in price of Vader Officer and sort of removing LTT from the game and cheapening dice add is really interesting, just as a game design perspective. And then I also just kind of want to talk about the fact that LTT isn't really gone. I think that there are some ships in the game that still want LTT at its new effect. Most notably, I think that the Assault Frigate Mark II-A, because it's got a double dice flag. You're not always going to have everything. You sometimes not everything's going to be in flak range, and so being able to pump 4 dice into something is still pretty interesting. I think that stuff that has a built-in red die for flak may want to consider LTT. So the Starhawk, that you have a title that lets you reroll dice for flacking. I think that a flak Starhawk could be kind of an interesting space. I don't know. I definitely don't think that the card is dead, but I think that its use cases are limited, which is important because literally every other upgrade in the game is used for 1, maybe 2 purposes. And its old form, LTT, was just kind of good at all of the purposes. And now limiting it so it's kind of in line with the rest of the game, I think is a super good change. So I'm kind of even on the dual turbo laser heavy fire zone and heavy turbo laser slots. I double thumbs up on the turbo laser towers. Might give it a 3 thumbs up if I could, just because I freaking hate seeing LTT everywhere. And I'm 1 thumbs up on XX9. I think it might have a place now.
So I do want to, I want 90 seconds for a rebuttal. The LTT, actually, first I want to start with the DTT. There is a difference and a distinction. You probably know this because you're better at the game than I am. But between adding a die and then canceling a die and re-rolling a die. And that is, if you have all single hits, you don't want to use LTT because you can re-roll into a blank. But if you have all single hits, yeah, I'll go ahead and roll another one. And if I get a double or a crit, I'll keep that and cancel one of my hits. So the add a die and then cancel a die effect is marginally better than re-rolling. And I would say it's a lot better if you, since it's an exhaust and a modification, those are the other costs. But if it was just straight up, you could do it on every shot, it'd be a lot better than re-rolling. Which I don't know if I would have had too much, or maybe once per activation, so you could still do it on salvos and stuff. But the LTT change, I think it buffs Akbar and it buffs Rebel long range ability because they took TRCs anyway. They've got double evades. They just would set one to a double. No need to re-roll. Bada bing, bada boom. They've got great squads for counters and screens and everything, so they don't have to flak. But now shooting back at those small, nimble ships that are shooting at you at long range and throwing boatloads of dice and setting them to doubles, that's weaker. And so that's one of the changes that I see coming from this is Akbar getting a little bit of a buff. It's unfortunate.
Also, I don't think you guys caught me, but I said something like Gladiators putting heavy fire zone on there, and they don't have a turbo laser slot.
I thought you
Nobody
said
caught me.
gladiators. I thought you said gladiators could take expanded launchers. I didn't hear heavy fire zone.
No, he definitely said heavy fire zone.
Oh.
I was unmuting to say something, and then you just kept talking. So
Yeah,
But
once I get tired, like
the old LTT, I think all upgrades should be like that, to be honest. I think every ship upgrade should have an anti-ship or a ship interaction and a squadron interaction. I realize that the rest of the game isn't that way, but stuff like Ord pods, they should consolidate some of these things. Like QLTs and PDRs, which is QLT gives your ship counter against squadrons, and then PDR, while attacking at close range, a squadron at close range, you can reroll your crit icons. I think those should be one in addition to something else that is like an anti-ship, or like Ord Pod should just be an extra ability for, rapid reloads or extracts or something. But so I don't like that the game took that away in that one instance. I wish it would have applied it more liberally. But that's all I have to say about that. We can hit this weapons team and wrap up since Josh is getting sleepy.
Yeah, I was gonna say the hamster wheel starts to hit a few snags once it gets late. Weapons battery tech went from 5 points to 4 points. This really feels like they're just putting their finger on the scale and being like looking at you side eye across the room, putting the finger down on the scale, and you're like, "Oh, are you interested now?" I lowered it by 20%. It's time to buy. This card is actually pretty decent. What it does in general is I think it makes your red dice effectively 3 crits and your blue dice effectively 4 crits. So if you are rolling a lot of red and blue dice, then your chances of hitting a crit go up dramatically. But obviously, you're spending and the opportunity to have an accuracy to get that. A lot of times, uh, this is actually really good if you have a list that's like overload pulse, boarding troopers, stuff like that, because you don't need the accuracies anymore. Whatever you're trying to kill, you want to boost the damage on. And then the other thing is, it works really well with just criticals in general. That if you have special crits, so dropping it by 1 point doesn't seem like much, but I could see somebody taking this if they were looking for a, let's say, a nutcracker is what I like to call it. So if you're going up against a list that has a tank, then you can bring this along and uh, really pull off all the crits to try and take it down, whether that be HIE, APTs, or something like that. This works really well on the MC75. So the MC75 got a lot of buffs out of this errata, just all over the place, like points decreases that helped it out. That I think people, I think we'll see it a lot more. Like it made its way into Worlds pretty far with the overload pulse and stuff, but I think this World is going to show up even more. Um, but yeah, it's 1 point decrease, but it's actually quite a bit. Also, okay, the last thing I'll say about it is this actually also helps out the Raider too for your disc caps, overload pulse, and whatnot, HIEs. Um, it's not much, but it's something. I'll give this like 1 thumbs up.
Yeah, the only time I've ever seen this played was exactly what you said. Right after I posted it in the chat was Raider 2, weapons battery techs, disposable capacitors, and HIEs to really increase the odds of getting that as HIEs off. Maybe with the drop in points to this and the Sis Gazani, we'll see this on the Sis Gazani to guarantee that you're getting a damage. That'd be a cheaper route than going SW7s, and then you could also put a crit effect on there also. So you get a 50-50 shot at a crit, or if you're doing like a front and side arc or Confire or something, or Martuk, you really increase your odds of getting those crits off. And just doing damage, because if you're just rolling one blue and you roll an accuracy, that does absolutely nothing for you. So that's another spot for this. But other than that, I don't really. Usually, you want to change to an accuracy and not change away from an accuracy. I know there have been plenty of times where I wish I had just one accuracy or one more accuracy, and not so many times where I wish I had one less. So I'll give it a thumbs up.
Yeah, I kind of don't care. probably never going to play this card. I haven't yet. So, middle of the road.
All right, that's a good way to end the pod. Yeah, let's give like a brief uh overall feeling about the errata. I'll go first since I have. Overall, it's two thumbs up. There's a lot of changes in here that like needed to happen and that helped the game out. Some of them are I'm rather ambivalent about, but overall, there's a lot of things that needed fixing that uh, that got looked at. So I'm really happy with it. Um, I am looking forward to playing all this stuff. I haven't really gotten this stuff out on the board after the changes, but I'm excited. I'm excited for what Armada has to offer in the future. Honey Badger, what do you got?
Maybe a half a thumb up. I think they did fix some things that really needed to be touched on. Shout out to the price change, no more accuracies, cleaning up some of the wording so some stuff actually works now. Yeah, I think that's about it. There were a lot of points reductions, and I feel like too many. It was 2 points reduction heavy, and there should have been some more point increases. Some things are just, or maybe some changes to how things work. Some things are just way too efficient. I don't like the change to admonition. We've talked about that. And some of these like really drastic changes, 4 to 8 points on a ship is quite a bit to knock it down in one go. But I wish they would have increased the points of some of the things that are a little overpowered or a little just too efficient. TRC 90s with Akbar, shooting 3 red dice at long, setting 1 to a double, double evade. MC 30s, way too efficient. At least in the Empire, I feel like the firepower that the Empire brings, you do pay a premium for. I think their squads and their aces are a little too cheap, but now the Vic dropped down to 80 points, and that thing is scary at long range. Throwing 4 blues, 4 reds, like a pocket ISD 2 at long range because it can decaps. So yeah, I think all in all, maybe a half a thumb up. But a lot of the stuff that they touched on was just like, it's still going to be binder fodder. It's still not going to get played.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of somewhere in the middle, so I guess that would probably put me at a 1 thumb up. I think that I'm happy that at least at face value, the game is not broken, and it seems like their intention was to just give us a farewell update and then be done, and I think that they did that pretty well. I think that at least based off of my speculation, the game is in as healthy of a state as it was before the update. Some things got a little bit better, some things got a little bit worse. I think there are some pretty clear winners, and CIS is just about half of them. Radis looks pretty insane, and Anakin, agree to disagree. Maybe I think he's going to be really good. And some stuff got changes that isn't really going to affect much. I think about half of these are still bottom of the barrel, and I think that some of the things that also needed some help didn't get it. Where's Palpatine? Where's Sato? Some of these other pretty underwhelming cards just aren't getting the help that they probably needed. So honestly, I feel like it feels a little bit half baked. I think Django. If Django wasn't there, I would have been overall pretty disappointed. But having that as a nice conclusion puts me feeling a little bit more positive. All in all, I'm excited to try out some of the new ideas. I've got like 15 lists that are brand new, rearing to go. I just need to get some games in. So maybe in a few pods from now, I'll have some opinions to share.
Hit me up. I'm in the same boat, trying to get some games in.
If I have the time, I don't know. I'm not much for online play, but we'll see.
All right. Well, thank you for listening today. We're not going to go through any elevations just for the sake of time, but we thank you for listening. If you are listening on Spotify, you can leave a comment. If you're on YouTube, give us a subscribe and a like if you enjoyed the video or if you enjoy our content. And yeah, share this with your friends.